Before I could react, the hooked chains returned. They dug into my flesh, and so cold they burned. They dug into my arms and my legs just the same. They cut down to my bone and filled me with pain. Pieces of my flesh ripped off and fell to the ground as the chains continued to cut in all around. Blood began to gush out from my wounds, and then I knew that I was doomed. I had done wrong, and there was now no escape. I could do nothing but accept my own fate. The hooks continued to pierce through my skin 100-fold for every one sin. My left arm was then ripped out of its socket, and it flew off my body as if it were a rocket. My blood would spill out and freeze on the floor, only to be continuously covered with more. I screamed out in pain, but there was no pity. Only more hooks buried within me. My right leg then followed in my left arm's stead, leaving behind it a puddle of red. My body went limp and hung from the chains, blood spilling to the floor and leaving its stains. I cried tears of blood that ran down my cheeks, knowing then that my future was bleak. I then heard a million voices, all in my head, an army of wailing souls of the dead. The voices began to drive me insane as chunks of my flesh were ripped out by chains. Soon, there was no skin left to be ripped, and there on the floor was a pile of it. Then my flesh began to crawl on the floor, writhing and slithering pieces of gore. They crawled onto my body and back to their place, reattaching themselves from my feet to my face. Soon, my body was once again whole, only for me to again pay the toll. And now, here forever, my fate was to cry, to suffer forever, and never to die. I then looked up, and there I seen the light of peace shining down on me. The light had cut through every ring down here where he was king. The beast then stopped. He looked enraged, with a snarling grimace upon his face. Then hooked chains burst forth from under his skin, out of his chest and arms. They came to do me in. Those chains came at me at a mighty speed, but they were suddenly stopped by the light of peace. The chains coiled and circled the light, but they could not reach me inside. It was then that I was lifted off of my feet, and as I floated away, I became more at peace. I heard the beast scream in rage, his chains reaching up for my legs. Their every attempt was thwarted by the light, and then, soon, I was out of reach, but he would not give up his fight. The light had ripped through Jablon's gut, and out of his stomach it carried me up. The hands of Legion grabbed at me, but the light burned their skin so very deep. I was carried up, on out of reach, but those chains continued and followed me. The light carried me up past Satan's throne. He seen me and let out a guttural groan. He rushed the light and grabbed at my chest, but the light cut right through his bicep. The light turned Satan's arm to dust, and his blood spilled out, all filled with rust. I left the beast screaming by his throne, and I left the ring of hatred's home. I moved upward, out a hole in the sea, while Leviathan circled all around me. He bit and lunged at the light, but he would never venture inside. I was carried away from the serpent's reign, on above Asmodeus' swamp of envy and pain. She screamed in anger and clawed at me, but her disgusting limbs could not reach. I was pulled back up by the heretic's fire, past Baalim, bound by chains and wire. His chains then mingled with the ones that had followed, chasing me through where the light had hollowed. I was pulled out of the temple of the heretic, and on through the door of the greedy and sick. Mammon appeared to look surprised, with a glint of anger within his eyes. He tried to tempt me with his gold, but he was a liar, too greedy and cold. When he seen his lies had no effect, he threw bars of gold at me, right and left. The bars hit the light and reflected back, landing with a thud upon his lap. The demon buried himself in greed as I traveled away from his sinful deeds. I moved on upward through the shaft, where I was lowered down by Azazel's craft. As I moved by, his true face was shown with the light's powerful glow. He hissed at me as I passed by him, but he did not touch me. He had too much pride. I was pulled back past the rivers of blood and up near the giant sitting in mud. He reached for me with his massive hands, but when they touched the light, they turned to sand. The sand was a deep red hue and fell upon the piled dead. Buchan let out a groan of pain and blurted out words so profane. I was pulled back past the suicides and into the abusive ring, back through the wretched land where Belial was the king. The light had cut through his massive jaw, and he laid back all twisted and bent. I still remembered his disgusting smell, but I could not smell its scent. I was pulled back into the halls of gluttonous sin, where I again seen his vile grin. There, Belphegor sat upon his double throne, his fat rolling off his body and hiding every trace of bone. He threw his plates of gore at me, but they reflected back into his face. He watched me rise above him with a look of disgust and disgrace. I was pulled out of the gluttonous ring, back up by the two-torso king. Astaroth and Loki clawed at my robes, however their fingers cracked and fell off before they could reach my clothes. The beasts then screamed and beat each other to take out their rage, as I was pulled onward and out of Cerberus's gate. He lunged at me, but his chains made him cease. I then looked back to see those hooked chains still reaching for my feet. I flew back over the river Styx, where the ferryman was rowing, onward, up in the peaceful light that was glowing. I flew on past the second gatekeeper, the giant by the wall. He screamed curses at me and wished for me to fall. I was pulled past him and right back to the start, where the first gatekeeper stood, rotting with his lack of heart. He reached out for me, but was too weak to pierce the light. I was pulled back into the forest, where it was no longer night. There, I seen my body laying beneath a tree. Then I felt my soul get pulled back into me. There I awoke beside my fire pit. Not a burning ember was left inside of it. I sat up and wondered if it had all been a dream. Then I heard a whisper in the wind from what it seemed. The whisper told me to go forth and do what is right, to rid the world of its evils, and not give up this fight. So I beg you all to save the world as the whisper said, so we do not all wind up within this realm of the dead. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.